Okay. So I was thinking about this the other day. Like when you're shopping online and you remember seeing like a really great review for a specific brand,
Hmm.
and it just pops into your head right when you're about to buy something.
Yeah.
Or maybe there was like a news story a while back about an issue with a different brand, and it kind of makes you hesitate, even if it wasn't a huge deal.
Right. Right.
It's crazy how those recent, easily remembered things can sway you, huh?
It really is. It's like our brains have this built-in shortcut where whatever pops into our minds easiest feels like it's the most important or the most likely to be true, especially when we're talking about what to buy.
Hmm.
And that's precisely what we're diving into today, this thing called the availability heuristic.
Oh, I like that.
We'll be exploring this fascinating mental shortcut and how it plays a huge role in e-commerce psychology, impacting the choices we make as consumers.
And what's really interesting about this? Understanding this availability heuristic can actually help us become more aware of, like, the subtle things that influence our own buying decisions.
Yeah.
Like, once you see it, you can start to spot when it might be leading you down a certain path and maybe make more informed choices.
Absolutely. It's like having this extra layer of awareness when you're shopping.
Yeah.
For some background on today's deep dive, we've gathered a collection of insights all about the availability heuristic, specifically within the e-commerce world.
Okay.
So we'll be looking at what exactly it is, the psychology behind it, the history of the concept, and how it affects consumer behavior, marketing strategies, even ethical considerations, and what the future might hold. So are you ready to get started?
Yeah, let's unpack this. So first things first, what exactly is the availability heuristic?
All right, so in the simplest terms, the availability heuristic is this mental shortcut where you judge how likely something is to happen or how often it happens based on how easily you can think of examples.
Hmm.
This idea was really brought to light by the work of Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman, some pretty big names in psychology.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard of them.
You probably have.
So what really gets me is how our brains seem to link how easy it is to remember something with how important or how common it actually is in reality.
Right.
Do you have an example of how that might play out?
Sure. So think about this. Imagine seeing a news report about a phone battery, like exploding. Even if that's a really rare occurrence statistically,
Okay.
the vividness of that image and how recently you saw it can make you think that specific phone model is way riskier than it actually is.
Yeah, I can see that.
So it's not always about the hard data, but more about what pops up in our memory first.
Right, so it's about what's most readily available in our minds.
Hmm.
And the psychology behind why we rely on these easily accessible memories is interesting.
Absolutely.
It's connected to this thing called System 1 thinking, right?
Exactly. System 1 thinking is your brain's fast, intuitive way of processing information. It's kind of like autopilot. And it often relies on emotions and instinct. It's the mode you're in when you're making those quick, everyday decisions.
Like what to click on first when you're browsing online, right?
Exactly. Or even which product catches your eye first in a store. Since System 1 works so quickly and loves using readily available information, it's super susceptible to the availability heuristic.
I see.
If something's easy to remember, System 1 takes it as a sign that it's important or likely without really overthinking it.
So it's not exactly the most rational way of making decisions.
Well, not always. And that's actually where the difference with System 2 thinking comes in.
Yeah, that slower, more analytical thinking.
Right, the kind where you carefully weigh pros and cons.
But it does feel like in the fast-paced world of online shopping, our gut reactions, the ones driven by System 1, often play a big part in what ends up in our shopping cart.
Absolutely, that add to cart button gets a workout from System 1.
Yeah, no kidding. And this whole idea of how our minds work was a big shift from how economists used to view consumers.
Oh, for sure.
They used to think we were all perfectly rational, carefully comparing every detail before making a purchase.
Like we're walking around with spreadsheets in our heads?
Yeah, but behavioral economics came along and said, hold on a second. There's more to it than that.
Right. Those mental shortcuts, like the availability heuristic, can lead us to make choices that might not seem perfectly logical when you look at them closely.
So real life isn't a spreadsheet.
Exactly. And the economic implications of this are huge. Think about a product that explodes in popularity because of, like, one catchy video that goes viral.
Yeah.
That's the availability heuristic at work, driving tons of attention and sales.
Wow.
On the flip side, even one uncommon product flaw that gets a lot of media coverage can have a lasting negative impact on a brand.
That's interesting.
Like, people might avoid that brand for a long time, even if the problem was isolated.
So the stakes are high for businesses.
Absolutely. Their reputation is on the line, thanks in part to this availability thing.
Okay, so now we know what the availability heuristic is and why we use it. Let's go deeper into the theory. How does cognitive science explain why some memories are easier to access than others?
Well, from a cognitive science perspective, it boils down to how much attention you pay to something, how your brain first stores that information, and how easy it is to retrieve it later.
So like if something really grabs your attention.
Exactly, especially if it's tied to an emotion or a striking visual.
Yeah.
Your brain encodes that information more strongly, which makes it easier to remember later. That's why ads that use vivid imagery or strong emotions tend to stick with us.
It's like those ads become more readily available in our minds.
Right, they leave a stronger imprint.
And this connects to how we process information, right? Like automatically versus deliberately.
Absolutely. Our brains are constantly taking shortcuts to save energy.
Hmm.
So we often rely on automatic processing, which is heavily influenced by those readily accessible memories and emotions. It's faster and less effortful than deliberate thinking, where you weigh all the options.
So the availability heuristic works hand in hand with our brain's tendency to go for the easy route.
It's like they're best friends.
Makes sense.
Yes.
So besides attention and how we process information, what else makes certain memories feel more available than others?
Well, emotions are key. Think about events that trigger strong feelings, whether it's laughter, fear, or feeling touched. They tend to stick in our minds.
Yeah.
Then there's recency. Stuff you experienced or saw recently is naturally easier to recall than things from way back.
Like what you had for breakfast versus what you ate last week.
Exactly. And frequency also matters. The more you're exposed to an idea or a brand, the more familiar it becomes, making it more likely to pop into your head.
Like that song you keep hearing on the radio.
Yeah, it gets stuck in your head. And don't forget about vividness. Bold visuals, captivating stories, or even a catchy headline can make a big impact.
Oh, so it's not just about the information itself, but how it's presented.
Right, like remember that example of the food product recall headline?
Yeah.
Even if it was a rare incident, the vividness of the headline and the image can make consumers see that brand as less trustworthy.
That's powerful.
It is. It shows how all these different factors work together to shape what we remember.
And here's the thing. The availability heuristic doesn't work alone, right?
Nope, it's part of a whole crew of mental shortcuts.
So, like, how does it interact with other biases?
Well, take the representativeness heuristic, where we judge things based on stereotypes that easily come to mind. The availability heuristic can supercharge that bias.
Oh, interesting.
And then there's anchoring, where an initial piece of information influences your later judgments. What's readily available in your memory can act as that anchor.
So the first thing you learn about something can really skew your perception.
Exactly. And don't forget about the conjunction fallacy, where specific events feel more likely than general ones.
Could you explain that a bit more?
Sure, so it's when those vivid, easily recalled details make a specific scenario seem more plausible, even if it's logically less probable.
So it's like our brains prefer a good story, even if it's not the most likely scenario.
Kind of. And then there's confirmation bias, which is our tendency to favor information that supports what we already believe.
Ah, so it reinforces the availability of those existing thoughts.
Right, it's a cycle.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground on how our brains work, but let's bring it back to e-commerce.
Yeah.
How does the availability heuristic actually influence what we buy online?
Well, one major way is through the impact of recent events. Consumers are heavily influenced by what's fresh in their minds.
Makes sense.
So a flood of positive reviews can outweigh older negative ones.
Just because they're more recent?
Exactly. And intense media coverage, good or bad, can quickly change how people see a brand.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that.
That's why rebuilding trust after a brand crisis is so tough. The negative news is just so readily available.
It's like those memories are more potent because they're recent.
They really are. And it's not just recency, but also uncertainty. When people are unsure what to choose, they often lean on the most readily available information.
Like a news report or a friend's recommendation.
Precisely. They might even latch onto whatever product was displayed most prominently on a website.
Interesting.
This can even affect how they perceive prices.
Oh, really? How so?
If an expensive item is the first thing that comes to mind, maybe from a recent ad, it can become a price anchor, influencing their idea of what's reasonable.
So we're not as rational as we think we are.
Definitely not. We're constantly influenced by these subtle cues.
And you mentioned consumer memory. How does short-term versus long-term memory come into play?
Well, short-term memory is super powerful right before a purchase. If you see a captivating ad just before shopping online, that brand is more likely to be top of mind.
Because of recency.
Yes. But short-term memory fades quickly. That's where the peak end rule is important. Brands that create a positive high point in the customer experience and a satisfying ending are more likely to be remembered favorably.
So a good last impression matters.
A lot. The more vivid and emotionally engaging the experience, the more likely it is to stick in long-term memory.
So those positive memories become readily available for future decisions.
Exactly. It's about building positive associations with the brand.
Okay, this has all been very theoretical. Is there any actual evidence that the availability heuristic really influences what we buy?
Oh, tons of research backs it up.
Really?
Yes, studies consistently show that people often choose based on the first memory that pops up, even if it's not representative of the whole picture.
That's fascinating.
And research from all over the world suggests this bias is universal, although the intensity can vary across cultures.
So it's a fundamental part of how humans make decisions?
It seems so.
So any real-world examples of this in e-commerce?
Plenty. For example, think about choosing a brand of coffee. Many people just go for the one they saw advertised most recently, even if they've never tried it.
I've totally done that.
We all have. Another example is safety concerns. After a big product recall, sales of even unrelated brands in the same category can drop because people remember the negative news.
It's like a ripple effect.
Exactly. Then there's the rush for bottled water and batteries before a hurricane.
Driven by those vivid images of past storms.
Right. And who hasn't been tempted to buy an outfit they saw a celebrity wearing? It's because that image is so fresh in their minds.
Okay, those examples are super helpful. So for e-commerce businesses, understanding this is crucial. How can they use the availability heuristic to their advantage?
Well, one key strategy is strategic brand visibility. It's all about making sure your brand is always on people's minds.
Okay.
So things like consistent social media presence, eye-catching displays, memorable logos and slogans, they all contribute to that.
So it's like making your brand easy to recall when someone's ready to buy.
Exactly. It's about being the first thing they think of.
And what about advertising strategies? What works best to leverage availability?
Ads that evoke emotions, whether it's humor, empathy, or excitement, are more likely to be remembered.
Makes sense.
Strategically repeating your message also helps, but without being annoying. And timing is key. Imagine advertising warm drinks in the winter.
People are already thinking about that.
Right. It aligns with their current needs and makes your message more impactful.
So you're tapping into what's already on their minds.
Exactly. It's all about relevance and timing.
And how does this relate to product positioning?
Well, products that clearly solve a problem people are already aware of are more easily remembered.
Okay.
So focus on those needs that are already on people's radar. Also create memorable experiences like interactive demos or personalized service.
So it's not just about the product itself, but the whole experience around it.
Right. Make it memorable and they'll remember you.
Good point. So any practical tips for businesses to implement this stuff?
Absolutely. For retail stores, the layout is key. Guide shoppers so they see high-margin items first.
Oh, like strategically placing those impulse buys near the checkout.
Exactly. Online, use featured product sections, personalized recommendations, and even reminders about viewed items.
Smart.
And never underestimate a smooth checkout experience. A positive purchase process leads to positive memories.
People will be more likely to come back.
Exactly. And even post-purchase communication, like personalized thank you emails, can make a difference.
So keep the positive vibes going, even after the sale.
It all contributes to brand loyalty.
Great advice. But what about when things go wrong? How can brands deal with negative publicity?
Negative news spreads like wildfire.
Yeah, it's tough.
So a quick and transparent response is crucial. Address the issue head on, take responsibility, and provide accurate information.
Control the narrative.
Exactly. The goal is to gradually replace those negative memories with positive ones.
This is a long game.
It is. But by demonstrating action and transparency, you can rebuild trust.
What about launching new products? How can they leverage availability from the start?
Build anticipation. Tease key features and benefits before the launch.
Get people excited.
Exactly. Offer sneak peeks or beta testing to keep the product on people's minds.
So create buzz and make it feel exclusive.
Yes. And if there were past failures, highlight improvements and success stories to combat negative associations.
So it's about proactively shaping perceptions.
Right. Focus on the positive.
So looking ahead, how might trends like social media and the rise of digital content be affecting the availability heuristic?
It's definitely amplifying it. The constant stream of notifications and trending topics makes whatever's online seem more important.
It's like we're always being primed with new information.
Exactly. And younger generations who grew up with this might be even more susceptible.
It's their normal.
Right. And researchers are studying whether this is making the availability heuristic even more powerful.
It's a whole new landscape for understanding consumer behavior.
Definitely.
What other fields are contributing to our understanding of this?
Neuroscience is showing us how our brains actually form memories.
Cool.
Machine learning is helping predict which ads will be memorable.
Wow, that's advanced.
And behavioral economics is looking at how this knowledge can be used to create fairer policies.
So it's a multifaceted problem with implications beyond just marketing.
Absolutely. It touches on psychology, technology, and even ethics.
And what about those AI assistants and personalized recommendations we keep hearing about?
They have the potential to change how we access information.
How so?
On one hand, they can be super helpful suggesting products we might actually like,
Yeah.
but they can also narrow our choices by only showing us things based on our past behavior or algorithmic biases.
So there's a risk of getting stuck in a filter bubble.
Exactly. And cultural differences can also influence what people find memorable or important, so the impact of the availability heuristic can vary across markets.
It's a complex interplay of factors.
It is, and it's constantly evolving as technology and culture change.
Right. So to wrap up, what are some key takeaways for businesses to implement right now?
Focus on creating memorable marketing campaigns with compelling stories and visuals. Repeat your message strategically and test different approaches to see what sticks.
Got it.
Don't just focus on ads. Create positive experiences throughout the customer journey. Surprise and delight your customers. Handle issues with empathy, and those good vibes will be remembered.
Make every interaction count.
Exactly. And in the digital world, create attention-grabbing content, optimize for search engines, and time your communications strategically to stay top of mind.
Great advice. So to sum up this deep dive, what's the most important thing for our listeners to remember?
The availability heuristic is a powerful force in our decisions. Understanding how recent, vivid, and emotional information shapes our choices is crucial for both consumers and businesses.
It's about being aware of these mental shortcuts and using them responsibly.
Exactly. Knowledge is power.
And as a final thought, what's one thing you'd like our listeners to consider after this conversation?
Think about your recent purchases. Were any driven by something you recently saw or heard, rather than careful consideration?
Good question.
Reflecting on this can help you make more conscious choices in the future.
And maybe even become more savvy marketers if that's your thing.
Exactly. Turn this knowledge to your advantage.
Great advice. And before we go, just a quick reminder that this deep dive was powered by Growth Suite. Growth Suite can help you run smart discount campaigns on your Shopify store. You can try it out for free on the Shopify App Store.
Sounds like a good deal.
Thanks so much for sharing your expertise on this fascinating topic.
It was my pleasure.
This has been E-commerce Psychology.